Sitting there fighting a battle that was over when I had to relocate. You see, I ain't much for letting go. No, baby, I gotta hold on. Cause trials, tribulations, and relationships have all made me strong. Oh, girl, I cry. These tears that I shed on the trail to bring you home. Oh, girl, I cry. Mama told me that a man's own tears can make him strong. Oh, girl, I cry. I'll sit around here and wait for you to come home. I'll cry for you. I'll cry. I'll cry.
Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips in the balance of the favor of fair use. Welcome to today's Black History Bite. Zora Neale Hurston, The Genius of the South, Part 2. Zora Neale Hurston was one of the fiercest writers of her day, but few knew how dark her history was. From personal heartbreak to public scandal and beyond, Hurston faced many curveballs through her life. She was a prolific and conversational author, but sadly, not even her blazing intelligence could save her from a devastating fate. We continue our story when she met the man of her dreams. In 1931, when Hurston was actually 40 years old, but officially only 30 years old, she met the man of her dreams. Percival McGuire Punter was a 19-year-old West Indian playing the lead in her play, The Great Day. The fact that he was a tall, dark brown, and magnificently built definitely attracted her in the beginning, but she claimed it was his fine mind that really got her. Interestingly enough, Punter felt the same way, but he kept his feelings quiet. In a move to save themselves from heartbreak, neither of them said anything and went their separate ways once the play was over. Ouch. Fate had other plans for them, though. She pined for him, being the total boss lady that she was. Hurston didn't waste her time just sighing over unrequited love. She was miserable. Sure, but productively so. Hurston penned her first novel, Jonah's Gourd Vine, and won a scholarship to pursue a PhD in anthropology at Columbia. She even started working on her collection of folklore titled Mules and Men. Clearly, her unfulfilled romances proved fruitful for her career. However, her love life was about to see some action very soon. Hurston's re-entry to Columbia wouldn't get her a PhD, but it reunited her with the man she's been trying to forget before she got there. Unfortunately, She dropped out of the doctoral program because of the authorities reduced her fellowship right after her first semester. However, she had no time to feel bad about it because she immediately went to Punter. She met Punter, who just started at Columbia himself. Hurston was over the moon, especially since she discovered the man hadn't lost his charm even after their 2 years spent apart. It seems to me that God must have put an extra time in making him up. He stood on his own feet so firmly that he reared back, but she would confess her feelings to him this time. Although she felt strongly about him, Hurston still wanted to protect her heart. She trotted very carefully, pretending not to notice Punter's shy flirtations until he declared his love for her openly. Their relationship was full of intensity and passion, but then there was a dark side to Punter's affection, which she discovered all too soon. Hurston may have thought Punter was unique, but he knew for sure that she was a rarity. He loved her sparkling wit and confidence, but also felt intimidated by it. She was a celebrity who had a roaring social life. And soon his jealousy began bubbling to the surface. He felt a deep resentment that he wasn't the center of her attention. So he asked her to give up everything, marry him, and move away from New York. Um, the man doesn't sound so hot now, does he? Hurston was head over heels, but even she knew that this kind of love spelled trouble. Any kind of reasoning didn't work. They were both the jealous sort and had full blown fights when either of them so much looked at another person. We were alternately the happiest people in the world and the most miserable. Sadly, all this tension accumulated into a disturbing climax. One day, angry over something she couldn't even recall later, Hurston slapped Punter, who responded in kind. Soon they were having a full blown brawl, complete with smacks and shoves, and Hurston realized that she had to get away. And luckily for her, the universe was listening and sent her a perfect reason to put some space between them. Punter's worst fears came true. Hurston received a Guggenheim Fellowship to study the culture and traditions in Jamaica. And knowing this was her way out, she grabbed the opportunity with both hands. She knew she had to release him and deal with her own obsessive feelings about him, and this was the perfect chance to do both. Their separation nudged Hurston towards productivity again, though, and she came up with a landmark piece of work because of it. The only way Hurston knew how to nurse a broken heart was though through exhausting herself with work. She doubled down on research in Jamaica and sailed from there to Haiti, where she began writing down her feelings. She spent 7 weeks writing feverishly, and her hard work resulted in a completed second novel. Naturally, she drew a lot of inspiration from the emotional upheaval she had recently experienced, but there were other autobiographical, wow, autobiographical. I said that wrong. Biographical. Wow. Autobiographical. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. But there were other elements in the book as well. Their eyes were watching God showcase Zora's doomed love through the relationship between the protagonist, Janie Crawford, and a younger man named Tea Cake. The characters weren't exactly like her or Punter, but she tried to embalm all the tenderness of her passion for him in the novel. She also made the setting of her story in her hometown, taking as much inspiration as she could from her childhood experiences. Another first Hurston accomplished in the novel was her use of the dialect she heard spoken around her in Eatonville. All her characters spoke the same way. Unfortunately, not everybody loved what she had written. Their eyes were watching God was way ahead of its time, but critics panned it for whitewashing the Black experience. Contemporaries like Richard Wright disapproved of it for having no theme, no message, no thought, for pandering to the white perspective, and for portraying the ideal of using literature to incite social change. Others considered her use of Black dialect a caricature of the culture. But our girl Zora had no time for the haters. Hurston didn't care what her critics and contemporaries were saying. She'd once say, I am not tragically colored. No, I do not weep at the world. I am too busy sharpening my oyster knife. And she directly replied to the criticisms, saying it wasn't fair to put down her work because she didn't write about the race problem. According to her, I was writing a novel, not a treatise on sociology. Though she didn't see it in her lifetime, their eyes were watching God stood the test of time and lived on to become known as her masterpiece. She may not have known it then, but Zora actually created one of the first Black feminist pieces of literature through Their Eyes Were Watching God. Alice Walker said, there was no book more important than this one. And while the professor of African American diaspora studies at Columbia claims that Hurston elevates Black language to a level of poetry, even Oprah Winfrey has called it her favorite love story. The novel has since inspired a television movie adaptation and has become mandatory reading in high schools and colleges in America. Who's wishing those male critics have lived to eat their words? According to her autobiography, Dust Tracks on a Road, Hurston reunited with Punter when she got back from Haiti. They were both delighted to see each other and then realized they were still in love. She stops talking about him in her book at this point, leaving the reader on a cliffhanger. Perhaps it was because the ensuing reality was too devastating for her to face. Although we don't know how it happened, we know that the Hurston Punter relationship ended soon after their reunion. And there was no going back because they both married different people the very next year. Loyal to her tradition of loping off years of her age, Hurston subtracted 20 years when she married Albert Price III, probably because the guy was just 23. It did not end well. When it came to her relationship, Hurston was almost 50 years old, marrying a boy half her age. Sounds pretty disturbing, to be honest, and the marriage lasted only a year, surprise, surprise, and was Hurston's last known romantic entanglement. After this questionable relationship, Hurston shifted gears. She returned to writing, but fate had a cruel twist in store for her. Hurston went on to write two more novels, a collection of folktales, Tell My Horse, and finally an autobiography titled Dust Tracks on a Road. Although the time of her publication, her autobiography didn't do too badly. Hurston's financial situation was in shambles. The highest ever monetary compensation she received for any work was $943.75. There was a couple of reasons that contributed to her growing unpopularity, and each was more heartbreaking than the other. Her contemporaries felt frustrated because Hurston seemed vocally supportive of pro segregation in schools. However, there were periods when she seemed to realize the extent of the race issue. For instance, she blasted Roosevelt for not extending his four freedoms to some people right here in America. Though her editors scrapped this paragraph from her autobiography, she also railed against the Jim Crow laws for restricting blacks to black seats in trains and back doors in houses. So clearly she realized at some level that there was a problem, but in the end, stuck to her original opinion. Hurston's childhood eternally influenced her perspective. She grown up in Eatonville, seeing an all-black group of people living peacefully as they wanted without any threats of brutality or race problems. Therefore, she felt people had an overrated concept of integration, believing there was actually no harm in segregation. Naturally, her community didn't agree. Sure, she could proclaim, I saw no curse in being black, nor no extra flavor by being white. But to apply the same argument to defend segregated schools, I could see no tragedy in being too dark to be invited to a white school affair. Showed a certain tone deafness, which her peers did not appreciate. But there was another, more devastating reason why her popularity suffered. Unfortunately, there was a much darker reason as to why Hurston had fallen out of favor. You see, someone pressed false charges against her for taking advantage of a 10-year-old boy in 1948. Luckily, she had been in Honduras at the time she supposedly hurt the boy, so she could easily disprove the story. Sadly, though, the allegation sparked a scandal that affected her book sales. After this distressing incident, Hurston's popularity nosedived. Eventually, she had to take up any job that came her way just to make ends meet. The next time we will return, we will have part three and the ending of the story, summary of Zora Neale Hurston. I want to thank you for stopping by Blended Healing for this dive into one of our African American renowned authors. Be well, stay safe, and I shall see you all very, very soon.
Sitting there fighting a battle that was over when I had to relocate. You see, I ain't much for letting go. No, baby, I gotta hold on. Cause trials, tribulations, and relationships have all made me strong. Oh, girl, I cry. These tears that I shed are the trail to bring you home. Oh, girl, I cry. Mama told me that a man's own tears can make him strong.